Welcome to Crest in partnership with Elusive. Producer Dodd here, about to push record on a summer holiday bonus episode. As regular listeners will know, I was supposed to be on leave prior to recording the epic Greg Owen episode in September. However, since the last episode, we came across the unexpected chance to chat to none other than Brad Gerlach. So the boys called me back from the poker tables of Aruba to put together this episode, and here we have it. Among other things, Tom and Rhino discussed Brad's new coaching program, WaveKey, and as a summer treat for Crest listeners, Brad has been kind enough to offer a 10% discount code if you subscribe to WaveKey via Crest. Details of the discount code are included at the end of this episode. So, with no further ado, we give you Brad Gerlach.
We're back on the international guest this time, and they don't get much bigger than this.
Besides a competitive career that saw him atop of the ASP ratings at one point and a reputation for world-leading big wave charging, Brad Gerlach is one of the best analytical minds when it comes to the science of surfing.
We'll be picking his brains on everything from trivia to technique, so stay tuned.
It's the Ger. He's here in our virtual studio. Welcome to Crest in partnership with Elusive, Brad.
Yes, thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. Now, I've got to start by sounding like a proper fan here, right? So I've got to say thanks for doing me a real surfing favour, which I'm sure you've got no idea about whatsoever. I bought a used Doc Lausch board of yours, a surf prescriptions board, in the year 2000 from Gig Celia's shop on New Pier in Durban. And it was an absolute revelation. It was this board with real super boxy rails. I think it was a 6.3, yellow Surf Prescriptions logo on it, and like a single black pin line around it. And it led me to then read up on why I love this board so much. And it said that you and Doc Lausch had been working on this idea of the boxy rails together. The idea being that the rails were so buoyant that they kind of like bounce out of turns and make flow and speed more of a thing. And I was blown away by the board, but then I broke it after only like a week, and then I got Spider Murphy to copy it, and then that broke, and then when I came back to the UK, I got Luke Young, a shaper from Plymouth, to copy it, and that pretty much fed into what I rode for like nearly a decade until the black box, etc., kind of cottoned onto the idea of more modern shaping advances caught up. Do you remember those boards?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The idea was exactly what you said, was that all the surfing, even the surfing we watched yesterday in the Olympics, it's all done on the rail. And so
yeah,
the idea was to thicken up the rail so that the rail could have the buoyancy, and then take out the thickness in the middle so that the surfboard could flex. So you're always playing with these flex patterns of the surfboard based on your weight. And if your board flexes just right and then snaps back to its original position or original shape, I would say, while you've released it, while you put the pressure into it, you weight it, it bends just right so that it creates a little bit more rocker. And then as you release your weight off of the surfboard and propel it forward, it snaps back into its original shape, and that's what gives it this snap, flex. It gives it this property of aliveness, and when you obviously liked that first board, otherwise you wouldn't have had it copied. So you had this feeling that it felt alive, and that's what surfers are searching for all the time, are that feeling of what's in a magic board and what does it do. And I've been fortunate enough to work with, it goes all the way back to working with Gary Linden and then through to Ben Ipa and Pat Rawson and Murray Burton, and man, Xanadu was incredible. I just worked with so many shapers. I've spent time with George Garino. I've asked shapers lots of questions, and just a lot of questions about about flex, about high performance. How can I make my surfboard do what I want? Because I want to fly over there, and I want to fly over there, and I want to avoid getting hit by that, and I want to whale that thing, and I want to, So, yeah.
Completely. Yeah, and my other big fan call out, I got to thank you for, is a little bit more silly, because my mates and I, when we were kids, we spent hours trying to copy that catamaran to Portugal scene that you did from the Taylor Steele movie Focus. A friend of mine, Duma Davies, who's a big fan of the show, and Rid Lewis, we'd be going down the hill nearby here when you and Donovan Frankenreiter tried to sort of sit tandem on 2 skateboards, and then you fall in a ditch in flares. Do you remember doing that?
I do, and I hear the oven. Just hang on a second, because I think my wife went outside. I just got to...
There we go. Right, Rhino's just quickly watching Focus on his phone.
Yeah, of course I remember that. We used to do the catamaran stuff in the 70s when we were 12, 13 years old, and we used to watch. I grew up in Encinitas, Lacadia area, where there was lots of skateboarding influence from Logan Ersky and Greg Weaver and Bane, and just it was a skateboarding, haven in San Diego in the 70s. So we learned that catamaran move, and then when Donovan and I were on that trip, and we were in Portugal and we were driving to Spain. We're like, hey, let's try this. Let's go over this. Let's go over the border doing a catamaran, we kind of didn't really think about it much other than we're just having a lot of fun, and a lot of people liked it.
It looked that way.
Yeah, it was fun. We had a lot of fun. Like, just mainly what I remember is a lot of laughs. And if we weren't surfing, we were trying to figure out a way to do something funny, and that wasn't even for Taylor's movie. Somehow that ended up in Taylor's thing, and I think is it in the credits or something like that?
Yeah, it's at the end. Yeah,
it's at the end.
It wasn't Taylor Steele filming.
It's the only way I could get myself into Taylor Steele film, because they were. I was outside. The bracket, you know what I mean? Until later, until Loose Change came around, and then I'll sort of.
Oh, you had an acting role in Loose Change, didn't you? I remember.
Yeah, I made my way in there on that one, but yeah.
I think you were a car mechanic, weren't you?
I was a car mechanic. Yeah. I was actually in this one. It's one of his first ones called One Step Beyond, but I didn't even know I was in it. It was one of those, but yeah.
Yeah, I think those Taylor Steele's Poor Specimen movies were really iconic. I think Momentum had to be my favourite of all time, I think, of that actual period. But
the thing I love so much about it, and even today, is sometimes, coming off the 70s, all the surf movies were around watching surfers surf just beautiful waves, Pipeline, Hawaii, or perfect Australia and South Africa, just J Bay, and like everything was just perfect waves. And then when Taylor Steele started putting his stuff out there, he was filming the guys in these onshore-ish, not so incredible looking waves, but they were performing really well on them. And to me, even today, like when people complain about the waves being really bad, I don't mind it. I actually like seeing people surf sandy bad waves, because I can see how much talent they have, or where they're lacking, and I want to see people. I love like 3 to 5 foot onshore-ish type of waves. I feel like those are the most rippable ones.
That was what everyone here has been saying about the Olympics. Is it was like, for us in Wales, basically we were watching like Italo Ferreira and Carissa Moore tear into our local break. Yeah, for sure. I liked it. I like the randomness of it. I like the bumps and the lumps and the way. And I'm familiar with those waves, because that's how the waves were when I went to Japan. Because when we went there a few times, there'd be a typhoon, and they'd do the same exact thing, same watercolor, just this cross shore wind. We just weren't doing aerials, then. And man, some of those aerials those guys were doing yesterday,
I mean, they're just like, especially in lows like airs, they're so insanely anti-gravity defying, incredible stuff.
My knees, your knees sort of feel as if they're going to break when you're watching when he lands in the flats there, doesn't it?
Well, when he lands in the flats wrong, that's when it looks like it hurts. Yeah, when he lands right, it looks like it's just a touchdown.
It looks effortless. Yeah.
But when he lands with his front foot down, which is what I did a little bit of a commentary thing yesterday, and I just when he landed down with the front foot, nobody can recover from that. It's like it'd be like landing a plane. You can take the most talented pilot and have them land the plane on the front wheel rather than the back wheels. That's going to be difficult.
Just a quick one there, Brad. Tom spoke about like a little fan moment earlier, but I actually had one of my own. Actually, you actually inspired me to get a jet ski. I actually saw there was that photo of you at Jaws doing like that really solid hack. I think Mike Parsons had towed you into it, and I think the board you were on was unbelievable at the time. It was a 6.4. But I didn't actually go on, I got to be honest, to go and surf any massive waves, but it certainly opened my eyes to a world outside of like surf competition, because I was doing a lot of surf competition at the time. But I'm not sure, do you remember that shot? Do you remember just below you, you're doing a huge hack, and just below you, you can see like a huge boil underneath you?
Yeah. No, that particular wave, so Jaws is so bumpy and stuff like that this was like a wave after a set or something, it's still a large wave. I don't know how, I don't really know how you measure it or whatever, but 30 foot or whatever, but it was a smooth one. And so when it being smooth, I could I wasn't at the mercy of the bumps and stuff like that. I could cut into it with the confidence that I wasn't going to skip out or hit a bump in the middle of the thing. And I could put my energy and leverage into the turn. And that was kind of a bit of a dream, like a dream come true, because that's what I look for all my life. I've been looking to go as fast as I could possibly go and then do the biggest, gouge I could do, and for me, Richard Graham was like my hero, and I loved power surfing and all that. So here I was on the 6.4 on a 30-foot wave with it. There's no real chance of where I was going to skip out, and I could just give it everything I got. It's really quite a memorable time.
I can imagine, and it must have felt incredible as well. But before we go on, Brad, I just need to give our listeners an up-to-date edition of your CV, actually, besides most of our listeners already know anyway. But Brad is a big wave pioneer. He's a former world number one. He's a WCT top 5 competitor across several seasons and runner-up to Damien Hardman for the world title itself in 1991. Brad is also pretty much a professor of all things to do with surf technique and has recently launched the groundbreaking WaveKey program. We'll be asking Brad all about WaveKey and its inception a little later in the show, as well as hearing from a top Welsh surfer who has come to completely swear by the program. So I suppose it's partly as a surf coach that we chat to Brad today, and it's in that role, as well as commentating occasionally to renowned acclaim, that he has been able to witness generations of key moments in world tour surfing. So Brad, should we start there? I guess you've been in or around some of the most amazing turning points in the history of surf. So are there any really which stand out to you particularly?
Well, I'd have to say when Kelly came on, that was, I suppose even before Kelly, when Tommy started his career, it was incredible for me to see, because I'm younger than Tom, and he was in a different division than Tom in the amateur rank, so I never really surfed against. I didn't surf against him as an amateur. He was just a little bit older, and then he turned pro before I did, and then he just started winning, and prior to Tom, it was only Joey Brand really there, and from the mainland, and So Tom just started doing really well, started winning, and it became like that thing where I was like, wow, and then it was like, he's actually better than, he's better than everybody else. And then Aki came along and he was like, well, wait a second, Aki might be better than Tommy. And those two were so fun to watch. And they were very inspirational. Both, you could see that they were taking things from each other. And I felt lucky to be, there every morning of warm-ups, like before the contest and, and during, in and around the contest when we showed up and, and then watching the competitions and watching Tommy surf and Aki surf. And that was a really incredible time. And then Kelly came on, and when Kelly came on, I was so excited about Kelly because he could surf so radical, and a lot of the surfing was very mechanical, and even Tommy had quit, and Aki had quit, and they were Aki was going off into doing some filming, and I was a bit jealous of that. I was like, oh, look how good those waves are, and we're surfing these crappy waves, and then Tom Curran moved to France, and it was like, well, where is he? Because he was the guy we all, sort of like, all right, he's the benchmark. So then Kelly came on. I was like, oh, cool, man, somebody who's just like really good, but then I ended up quitting just because I just needed to. That's a whole other story, but I just needed to grow as a person and get out. I wanted to go surf those really good waves. I wanted to do other things, but and it was insane to watch Kelly dominate so much. I think that was the thing, and then I guess the next thing that really was eye-opening was the big wave stuff, and people. I couldn't believe I saw this one picture of Peter Mell on a wave at Mavericks that looked like. It didn't just look like double the size of the biggest wave I've ever seen. It looked like 4 times the size of the biggest wave I've ever seen. I was like, he's on that thing? I remember seeing the picture, and that was a time when I was not surfing a whole lot, and I was interested in playing music and just doing other things. And I needed a break from surfing because it's all I did from when I was young. So at that point, I was smoking a bit of cigarettes, and like I was just like, who cares? I just want to be a surfer for fun, and I want to play music and just do art and whatever. And I remember seeing the photo of Pete Mel going, I will never do that. I looked at it, I was like, oh my God, what if he fell right there? Like it was so weird for me to see that picture thinking, there's not a chance I would ever do that. That doesn't look fun at all. Fast forward, and here I am on the biggest waves in the world, riding them. It's just like crazy, and towing in on those big waves out at Cortez Bank was like that. I think that was a big eye opener for like what surfing, what was capable. A lot of people dreamed of it. You're like, well, what if you could ride way over there? How would you catch the wave? And then like getting in on a by being towed by a jet ski. You're now. I mean, the board I rode at Cortez Bank was a louche, a dock louche, and it was that same theory of the flat deck. And I have the board here, but it was 7'2", 16 and 3/4 inches wide. So like to me that was a small board for a 60+ foot wave. Like I'm like, oh. Well, my board felt so exceptionally good on that very first day at Cortez, which was January 19th, 2001. And then I'd say, watching the sort of, the progression of the sport going more and more, going more and more into the air and going towards those incredible waves. Some of those incredible sort of competitions in Fiji and also in Chobu, and Jeffreys Bay. Those things weren't on the tour when I was there. It was only pipeline, and so. In a way, it's like, well, I really wish I was doing the tour when the waves were at those contests, and just, the other thing is you watch a lot of you see how the surfboards have changed so much because of the computer being able to shape and design on the computer and change every little nuanced thing. And the thing that I learned that was so crazy was that Xanadu he measures his surfboards the way that the computer guy was, the first computer guy that came in measures them. So what I learned was that, because Xanadu used to tell me all the time, he's like, don't show people my board. Like, don't keep it in a board bag. And I'm like, I was kind of like, really? Like, I'm so stoked on him. Like, I got to be that guy. You can't look at my board. I was like, fuck, He's like, don't do it. And people they'll figure it out. And I was like, okay. And I learned way later, because I was listening to a podcast, and I'm still friends with Xanadu, but that basically the guy that first came in with a computer shaping program and everybody sort of rubbed all the shapers wrong and said that they don't know how to measure a surfboard. Like, you don't even know how to do it, is what he said. And so they were all like, oh, this guy's kind of an asshole, but Xanadu was like, fuck, that's the way I do it, shit, in a way, like, so he got, so I think that's why Xanadu was so far ahead. I felt like my surfboards in 91 were like just really advanced. And so that's why a lot of people ended up getting them off of him, because he's such a genius. But I think with, seeing, I think with seeing like the technical, like how surfers have improved with all the videos, and to be able to rewatch the video and watch yourself, and all of that's been a huge influence on surfers. And then I think the Brazilian guys and girls, well, mainly I'd say more the guys, they are just they've got this great combination of incredible passion, a little bit of an inferiority thing, like, what you guys, you guys don't think we're good, which is the way I felt when I first started competing, and as an American, because it was Australians and Hawaiians and South Africans and Californians were like, except for Tommy. But so everybody's like, well, Tommy's the only one that's good. Nobody else is good. And I had like a very much of like, fuck you. I'm coming. I'm not taking no for an answer. I'm going to beat everybody. And so when I see with the Brazilians, I can see that they have that same, and with respect, but like they have that passion. What they have more than what I'd say, we had with California was they have a lot of support. So they have a supportive surfing community that helps their athletes. They help each other. And then they also they grow up dancing. They dance. They're not ashamed of dancing, where the Western world's a little bit like, oh, hey, like this. They're just like dancing. You know what I mean? And dancing is cool in Brazil, and you dance and you play soccer, and you do stuff at the beach. Like there's a big, there's a lot of advantage. And then, I think that the way their waves are too they've got a lot of backwash. They've got a lot of harder waves to ride. Yeah. And when they get on a wave that's not so hard, it's easy for them. Or if they get into a situation like yesterday in the Olympics, they're like, oh, this is kind of like I was talking with Tom Carroll yesterday, and he said he thought it looked like an overgrown, it looked like a little bit bigger version of where Italo lives. So confident he'd be like, oh, this is just like home. Watercolor almost the same. It's all these bumps. He wasn't affected by bumps and all that. It was really awesome to watch. So I'd say, with all that, just watching all that, and see the thing. The thing is that for the last 12 years, 15 years, maybe almost 20 now. It's hard to say when I started, but I've been studying as a job. I've been just studying surfing. So that's that's what I do. I just watch and watch. And I watch with I've got a lot of reference to compare from the early years of the very best surfing of, Aki and Richard Cram and Tom Curran dude, there's so Archibald. There's so many pots. There's so many good surfers that I watch live right in front of my face that I can compare to. And then I have all the latest technology of being able to slow things down frame by frame without like VHS going like this. Is what I used to do.
Yeah.
I've got my dad's background of the diving and the technicality in diving, as well as there's more than just the technicality. It's the same in surfing. You can be technical. It's kind of like, it's probably like music, right? The UK is amazing for music. You can have people that can sing really well karaoke style, and then you have somebody who has that special thing. That's the same in surfing. You have somebody, it has that special thing, you know? It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's actually perfectly imperfect. And so that kind of stuff is what I look for. I know how to help somebody like find their potential. I know how to bring it out because my dad did it for me. My dad didn't surf, but fell in love with surfing, had the background of diving. And then I studied a lot with martial arts teachers that martial arts is thousands of years old. So they've cut out the fat, so to speak. They've got the most efficient way to punch, the most efficient way to avoid, the way to do all these things. So they're looking at the power coming from the ground, the gravity, the force, all that kind of stuff. So I mix all that stuff together, and I found that because of my ADHD or ADD or whatever, I found I have the ability to completely block everything out, and I can look at somebody in such a way I can see it three-dimensionally, and I can just go, oh, I know what they need to do to improve. And from learning how to teach, I know how to teach it in like baby steps so people don't get overwhelmed. So it actually doesn't mess with your surf, like, because surfing is one of those things that's it's like a release. Like you go surfing, just relax and feel good and do all stuff, but if you're out there working on getting better and stuff like that, the question is, are you having as much fun? And if you aren't, then, there's this really delicate way of being able to help people improve. And if they even improve like that much, they go, well, if I improve that much, maybe I could improve that much again. And then you add those up over a time and you're like, I've actually improved this much, and all it is about your excitement for surfing. If you excited, that's a win. So you asked me to go through it. I guess I went through the whole thing.
No, that's amazing.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. We're gonna be asking you some questions about the formation of wave key and where the idea came from shortly, and I can see there when you're talking about martial arts and that, so it's going to be really interesting to hear what you've got to say about that. As we did in the past when we interviewed a character, Splinter Griffiths, a local character here who'd been interviewed previously by the Bodyboard podcast. What we're going to do moving forward here is we're gonna leave the kind of biographical stuff with Brad and recommend for that purpose our good friend Ads License show, because you had a good chat with Ads, didn't you, the Grumpy Surfer? And in that, Brad goes through some of the amazing stories about how he took up surfing, the tale of the borrowed board that you picked up on the beach at Lucada, and then the rise to the world tour. And there's pretty much two excellent hours of that stuff on Az's podcast. So we're going to assume we can get that there, and then that's going to allow us to stay on the proper nitty gritty stuff, which is where we are already, when we're talking about style and things like that. And it was really interesting to hear your comments just then, Brad, about the Brazilians. As a writer and somebody who spends a lot of time thinking carefully about language, I've always found it fascinating watching the world tour and watching the language used to describe Brazilian surfers. So, for example, Felipe Toledo or Gabriel Medina in particular are described by commentators as dangerous, and we never hear Kelly Slater described as dangerous. And I've always wondered, what is that danger? Is it like this guy poses the danger of like us all going home at the end of the day with the wrong guy having won or something like that. Because, you know, they never say Kelly is dangerous, as if like, oh, Kelly winning his heat, that's not a danger. That's a thing that's kind of in the script already. So it's really interesting to hear you link that to Tom Curran, you know, and saying that like you had this feeling that you were all sitting on this kind of like pre-planned little circus where it's all designed for Curran to sort of collect all the praise and all that, and that you saw yourself as that spoiler. You know, you were the guy that was dangerous. You know, you were the danger of the day going wrong and the wrong guy winning and taking it all away from Tom Curran. And I see those kind of connections, and I think to that end, it's really interesting then to maybe move on and talk about both Curran and to talk about style there and to talk about what we saw in the Olympics, because I thought it was amazing that the Olympic final itself was actually won in the men's without any airs. Italo Ferreira did win it entirely on the rail. And talking about style, now I don't know if you remember this one, but there was a surf movie, a 90s surf movie called Style Equals Shred Plus Soul, with Boulaya saying that the conclusion of the movie was Gerlach got the soul, Collins got the shred, and Curran get the style, yeah? And I'm just wondering if you think that style in modern surfing is still something that remains the absolute paramount, you know, and to see that, you know, one of the things that Brazilians have very much now acquired is style. You know, I think that they used to catch a lot of flack, you know, the guys that you were against, you know, your Victor Ribas, Guilherme Herdy, you know, some of those guys, you know, they were very efficient point scoring machines, but now we have kind of style thrown into the mix. And do you think that's been a game changer?
I think that the one thing both Italo and Tom Curran have in common is they don't lean over. So they're both shorter, so it's easier for a shorter person not to lean over. But I think that is one of the things, technical things, that if you can learn to serve and you can serve without leaning over, you're going to have a lot more control. And then when you have a lot more control, your timing is going to be better. When your timing's better, you do things with less force. When you do things with less force, you let the wave give you the power. You're able to express yourself. Now, in the case of someone like Dan Reynolds, for instance, he's got great technique, but he purposely, in between his turns, looks like he tries to make it ugly, almost like an artistic way of like, but whenever he does his turns, he simply cannot make his turns look ugly. And so it's this very interesting, like anti-style kind of it's a very cool, I think it's a very cool presentation, you know, so it's a style within itself, you know, and I think that style is the ultimate, because style is the individuality. Style is what you resonate to and say, well, you know, I hate the way Gerlach surfs, so, you know, I don't care if he can do a good cutback. I hate that finger thing he does, you know, which I agree with him. I don't like that part too. But like I think that the style part of it is really will never be like passe, or otherwise it goes towards gymnastics. And surfing is much deeper and a much more artful than gymnastics. Gymnastics has lots of things it's exciting to watch, but, you know, pretty much nowhere near as exciting and as unpredictable as surfing. So, you know, I think that's really the styles thing is the thing that lasts, you know? So when you don't have your spectacularness anymore, but you're still stylish because you're so effortless. I mean, like I surfed with Skip Fry when he was like 60 or whatever, and I was 27, and I was just like, man, the guy's like blowing me out of the water with style. He was like way more stylish than me. But I was like, cool, that's something for me to shoot for, you know? I can move on with that effortlessly and that calmly and that, you know, like I was great, you know? So I don't know if that sort of answers the question there. I mean, you were saying something about dangerous, but I mean, I think what they mean by dangerous is that when you can get a score on a closeout of 8 points and more on a closeout, that makes you a dangerous competitor. And me,
Yeah.
I could blow my fins around backwards at will. So whenever I got in trouble into a heat, I would just go towards surfing really extra radical, and then I would get the score if I was surfing against somebody that was more of a tactician and not as much of a talented surfer, but more of a competitive surfer. So I think that's where the danger comes from. I think Kelly Slater is completely dangerous. Like at any given moment, the guy could get a score. So and Tom Curran was the same. You just could never leave him alone. You had to pay attention. You had to try to be there and predict. So in some way, not let them catch a wave. And I don't mean by hassling, but just being there and being able to choose it instead of them choosing it. And, that there's a whole art to the wave catching part of it that is, some people have such a good knack for it, and, others have, I had a tougher time with it. I think it has to do with my ADD. I just got bored too fast, and I started looking at other things, and I got distracted, and a bird would fly by, and I would look at the colors of the wings of the bird on the inside of the feather and go, fuck, that looks really cool. Meanwhile, I should be paying attention and trying to win the heat. It's just, if I knew that about myself back then, I probably would have maybe got some hypnosis or some kind of way to be like, hey, look, and I did actually work with a hypnosis person that did help me stay solely focused in on the waves. And anytime a distraction came, I was able to recognize it was a distraction. But that's a side story. But that also helps me in my teaching when I'm teaching people, because each and every person student has something different, and has some hidden talents and some special things that make them.
That's so cool. That's so cool. And Brad, like you talk about Tom Curran there quite wistfully, and talk about his style. He's like his style is timeless, and of course his speed, power, and flow is just like on point even to this day when you watch him. But I was just wondering what your thoughts are nowadays on like the Groms coming through. Is there an emphasis on like single explosive maneuvers, do you think, meaning surfers now think less about the idea of linking turns and having that flow?
I think they do in a sense, but then again, I can't. That's a generalization. So you've got like there's a young guy from here. His name's Oscar Langburn, I think, and he's just a fluid, good, stylish little surfer. It doesn't look like he's trying to do anything super spectacular, and it's more about the start to the finish of the wave. There's another kid here that surfs really good. His name is Jai Glindeman. He's got great style. I think Taro Watanabe has an incredible style, and we work on the spaces in between. We work on the finishing part of the turn, what prior to the turn, the smoothness of how going from one turn to the other turn, because not just because of how it looks, but because it improves your timing. When your timing's just really, really good, you can really relax and express yourself. And that's ultimately where you want to get, is the point. If expressing yourself is like I said about Dane, he's going down the line and he's going he's literally, you can see him going down the line and he's like doing this kind of stuff that he doesn't. Watch the first chapter, he doesn't do that at all. He just goes like this. But it's like he's like, no, that's, I want to go the opposite direction. I don't want people calling me style guy. I don't know whatever. He's an artistic cat. I dig his whole thing. But I think that the spectacular isms or whatever of today, is all, you got social media, you got whatever, and people are doing flying in the air and doing all that kind of stuff. But eventually it's going to be more sophisticated than just flying up in the air. Because like some of that stuff you saw Italo do was just like first wave in the quarter or whatever, that thing was just so insane. And you're like, okay, so I'm going to watch somebody else do one that's a little smaller than that, and not as, it's kind of like next. But if somebody does something that's smaller than that, but looks super, super beautiful or really stylish something that you go, whoa, that was really cool. That was really effortless. That's where surfing is going, whether people like it or not, because that's attractive. You know?
That wave you're talking about there, the first wave of the quarters, I kind of wonder whether that, in a way, was the wave that won him the Olympics, because it was like the first 30 seconds of the heat, 9.7, and then it allowed him to have one heat off from that kind of catch 15 waves thing that he was doing, and he was able to just conserve his energy and just concentrate on backing it up with only like a half score from there, and then that perhaps was why he was able to break his board in the final and still get back out, and and sort of keep it going and not get tired. So I do wonder whether, in terms of like moments, that was a really key moment.
Yeah, well, he had a tough semi, and that's part of the reason why I thought he was going to win. Aside from he was more the favorite than Kanoa, but I didn't think he was going to have a bad heat in the final, because what happened to me, like I would have a bad heat but still get through, and sometimes that was a really good. That was like, oh, I might win this contest, and that happened to me in my first kind of terrible quarterfinal heat against Glenn Winton, and I ended up winning the contest. But it's sometimes if you can get through those bad heats, which is semifinal, he made a ton of mistakes.
Yeah.
Anyway, that kind of I thought he was going to win because of that.
Yeah, interesting. That Glenn Winton, Mr. X, that's a name I haven't heard in a while.
Yeah, he lives not too far from here, and whenever I see him, he's such a sweet guy. Like, he's a kind of special guy. I don't know if you saw that when he was in the when they had that Masters in Azores, and he was saying, man, he made me cry because they interviewed him, and he said something about, like, I'm doing this for my mom, and he started. You could see that he just welled up with emotion, and I was like, oh my god, that was like boom, hit you right in the heart. Like he's a cool cat.
You just mentioned Taro Watanabe as well, somebody who you've been working with, and we checked him out on Instagram, and you were talking about the sort of social media emphasis on, someone doing a big blast or whatever, and then there, sitting amongst all of that filler on Instagram, is this guy who just puts complete rides together, and exactly everything you're talking about here, how you look in between turns, how you look going down the line, what you're doing with the arms. It kind of looks, I can see a lot of the surfing that you talk about, a lot of the surfing that you've done, and a lot of the surfing that you foster on the WaveKey program in the way that Taro Watanabe surfs. And and I think we're gonna talk shortly about WaveKey. When you look at how some of those WaveKey forms are put together, perhaps it's just because I've been looking at those the last week or two, but I was watching Taro surfing, and I could see all of the things that that WaveKey talks about in the way that he was surfing.
Well, he's just been doing it since he was since his 11th birthday. So when I started training him, then WaveKey was so much different than it is now. So he's a constantly changing, evolving surfer, and it comes down to his experience in waves, getting the opportunity to go surf a bunch of different types of waves, but with the foundation of understanding these extremely high level, they're like high level concepts of how much pressure is the right kind of pressure to get the most amount of speed on a wave, like Huntington Beach, that has, when it hits a flat spot, and how do you do a turn in this flat spot without slowing down? And we go through it, and it's fascinating because I'm watching him as he's growing and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And there was a point there where he was starting to surf slower, and I was like, how is that even possible? Because his timing's so good and all that stuff. And I'm like, oh, and he's getting stronger. He's getting physically stronger. So he himself is pressing into the board harder than the right kind of pressure because it feels good. Because when you press into the water and he's got leverage because he's got the right technique, so he's stronger. So he's thinking, okay, I'll press harder. So this is just this is not something he would say to me or say to anybody, and people wouldn't even notice. But I see it and go, oh, you're pressing too hard right there because you think it feels good, and maybe it does feel good, but it doesn't look good. You're going slower. Here in this place, you have to have the sensitivity to know that if you press too hard right here, you're not going to accelerate. You're going to decelerate. So you want to know as a surfer how to accelerate, and then you also want to know how to decelerate because you might be either going too fast and you want to slow down to get tube. You've misjudged something and you're going too fast, and you need to decelerate to get back to the power. You need to know how to decelerate. But if you're unintentionally decelerating, which I'm seeing, I say over 95%, maybe even 98% of all surfers that I see, pros all the way, they decelerate in some of their most spectacular turns, and unintentionally.
Yeah.
And so and Kelly knows how to accelerate. Dane knows how to accelerate. They know, and that's why you watch him and go, wow. So much power, so these types of conversation. I'm just picking one out, but like now take him, he's at Pipeline, Taro's at Pipeline, certain Pipeline, there's an excess of power. How does he handle all that power and speed and control? How do you control the surfboard so you can express yourself and you're not just at the mercy of this, big, so much power. So we just go through all those types of things, and I suppose like his style is his own. When I first started working with him, his arms are kind of out like this, and I just love his own personal style, and all I do is make sure that he isn't. One of the major things too is leaning over. Like I said. If I knew this when I was a pro, I would have been way more successful. And leaning over means using your head to go. Like if you want to get on your toes, do a front side bottom turn or whatever. If your head goes over your toes to do the bottom turn, and you're not good, and you're going too fast or you're going too slow. If you're going too fast, you're going to skip out. If you're going too slow, you're going to bog. So you learn how to. If you learn without having to think, oh, I got to keep my head over my board. You just learn that you learn it through practicing wave key, basically, so that it becomes an instinctual thing. And this is why Italo yesterday, bumpy, lumpy, all these different types of things. The only time I saw him fall was when his head was not in the center. I could see it, and that was just barely he's just. But I've seen Italo surf since he was 16 because he used to surf against Connor in the World Juniors. So I've seen him surf. I've seen him progress. Like he is the most improved surfer I've ever seen.
Yeah, that's a good point because he had a couple of years on tour first of all where you certainly wouldn't have ascribed that dangerous tag to him, would you? And then all of a sudden now, there's just an absolutely deadly competitor.
When I first saw him, both knees were pointing the opposite direction. His back arm was going like this, and he looked like he couldn't even really do a traditional turn. And I was like, how is he one of the best? I'm just in my mind. I'm just watching. I want to watch every single. I'm really aware of every single surfer. I watch who they are, and I watch him. I'm going, how is he the best guy or one of the best Brazilians to be here in Bali at the World Juniors event? I'm like, huh. And then he went conk, and he did this giant backside air and stuck it. And I thought, well, that's probably how he's getting through all his heats. These airs, but good luck on turns. He's just going to be that guy. He's only going to be a specialist.
Yeah.
And then he's just. Yeah. And I watched him more and more and more and realized he doesn't lean his body over in a turn, and so that's why he doesn't spin out. Or if he does spin out, he's so over the top of the board he can handle the mistake. So, and this is the classic thing I saw with both early Aki footage and Tom Curran and Michael Peterson, if you go back, and Buttons and Larry Bergelman. You just keep going. You go, I said, that guy, no wonder.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. That's really interesting. Hey, Brad, I'd love to get onto the topic now of wave key. And to start with, we're going to hear a short package from a standout Welsh surfer called Chris Fowler. He's formerly of Lantwit and now of the Gower. He caught up with Tom to talk about his own experience of wave key and how it works for him and what it has done for his surfing.
Yeah, so this is an example now then when you like, I've been doing this for a little bit. So you've got the front side tuberoid combination, which means that when you do this routine, basically it'll link up quite a few things. Yeah. But you can see how you go through the process. Yeah, you go into a bottom turn, into a top turn, and then into a combo onto a cutback, and then some tuberoid. So it's like a real good chance to take some training, and you're thinking of surfing the whole time. So you start going through, almost like a Tai Chi style sort of routine, but it's all really, really sort of surf specific. The real key thing is when you go through this, it's not muscle memory, it's awareness and feeling. And that's something he talks about all the time, is that, so when you actually go surfing, you're not thinking my foot goes here, I lean here, I do this. Since I've been surfing, I haven't thought of this while I'm surfing once. Yeah. And that's the real clever bit. So I know when you get taught a lot of stuff, you end up with too much in your head and you're thinking, should I be here? Should I be there? And none of that happens. It's a real subliminal thing.
How long ago did you start actually using it?
Literally 6 months to the day, pretty much.
Right.
And I know that because I've been logging what I do and when. Plus it goes in modules, so you're kind of aware of where you are in it.
Yeah. Are you one of those guys who keeps a surf diary? I do. And I know Colin Bright your way does as well.
Yeah, I wasn't, but because of Jamie Bateman, who is probably a straight up Colin Bright disciple, as you know, he's always kept one. And because of the lockdown last year, I guess everyone was doing things slightly differently. So I started making one. Yeah. But what Bateman does is he logs a surf, he'll log the swell direction, he'll have the wave period, so that next time he sees it, he goes to his diary, he finds what it was like last time, where he went.
And he knows where to go.
He's got the full-on thing. So
yeah. So but you've kept a diary since you've been doing wave key then?
Yeah, well, the main reason was because I knew I was starting it, and from all the other kinds of training I've done, I've always done that. I've logged stuff, so I thought I'd log it just to see how it worked. So I did that as a bit of a sort of, well, let's see what effect this is having. And if I log it, I can look back and say, okay, it just caught me at just the right time. And I was like, right, okay, let's see what it's about.
And then you got results quite quickly from it.
Yeah, and spookily quickly. So it's one of those things, and I'll probably go into this in a few things. It's not so much the standard of what I was doing. It was a feeling of understanding of what I was doing, which led to more enjoyment in what I was doing. But then eventually, yes, I noticed my standard had improved.
Yeah.
And I had this brainwave one night that I've been coached to swim. I was coached with jiu-jitsu. I have a yoga instructor. I have people that know the ins and outs of everything, that for everything I've done in life other than surfing. I've never ever.
It's the most important thing to you.
Yeah. I've been on boat trips and holidays with, some of our friends. They're fantastic surfers. And I've never even once asked them anything. Yeah, I went on a 2-week boat trip to the Mentawais with Nathan Phillips, who at the time was one of the top pros in Britain, and I didn't ask him a single question about how you ride a barrel or how you surf. I just went surfing every day. I didn't. Yeah. I look back on that now and think I should have just picked his brains. How are you doing that? How are you threading? And it's so strange to think, but surfing's got that thing where you paddle out and you're on your own. You never share tips, and if you do pick something up, you don't tell someone else how you do it. It's just
So before we ask about wave key, just to put it into context, you're being quite modest because you are a pretty sharp surfer, I suppose. You're at the sharp end of Welsh surfing, at least. You've got a couple of contest wins under your belt. I was trying to check it out in my geeky book of knowledge. I've got a toxic trophy going your way. Is it? I think it's either 99 or 2000, isn't it? Which is a big contest in the late 90s to win. That was took Greg Owen and a few others down in a final, didn't you?
Yeah, it was. Well, it was actually. Yeah, it was the LBR Invitational, which was equally the same people in it.
Yeah.
And it was 99 or 2000. I can't remember, but yeah.
And but then you've sort of, you work a lot and you're not getting in the water as much, raising kids, all that kind of stuff, and you feel as though that then kind of makes you very much the sort of person that something like Wavekey is suited towards. Yeah,
definitely. And one of the key sort of strap lines that you'll see in Wavekey is that it's a way of linking your surfs. So one of the main messages is that, so if you, let's say example, you go surfing on a Sunday and then you don't go surfing for 10 more days, by doing Wavekey every day, it's explained really well. Let's say you do 21 takeoff practices every day for 10 days.
Yeah.
When you go surfing on the 11th day, it's not the first takeoff you've done in 10 days. It's your 211th, because you've already done 210 takeoffs. So it's like linking this surf to that surf, so that when you eventually go back in, if you're taking breaks, your body and your mind has been going through the process of going surfing in the gap. And that's the phenomenal part. When I heard that, I was like, it will, and it works. It 100% works in a really profound way. It's really clever.
Well, one of the things I remember that made me aware that you were doing something special was the picture that you put on Instagram that somebody had taken. And I've later found out that it was actually at Langland. And they've gone right out onto the next peninsula over and taken a shot back towards the beach, and you're coming off the lip. We'll chuck it on our Instagram, and everything looks in place for a man of your vintage. And you were saying that Wavekey was largely behind a kind of revolution in your style and your surfing fitness then.
Well, it's like you asked then, how quickly did I see results? Well, I started doing Wavekey for 3 days. I followed the fundamentals part 1, and I did the takeoff practice, frontside takeoff practice. And it so happened that after 3 days, and in the next 5 days, there was really good swell at Langland, Sand Reef, and also Monknash. Now, anyone who surfs Sand Reef knows that's a really hard wave to surf, really technical takeoff. And I've always gone out there with a kind of win some, lose some, 50-50. You eat it on a few and you have a couple of good ones, and you know that. And I had 2 sessions, 2 days in a row in pumping Sand Reef, where I had the most confidence in my takeoff. And also I was just dropping into waves well. I was just getting much, much better waves. And it was just really, really, let's say, transformational, the difference in such a short period of time. It was unreal. So I sort of DM'd Brad on Instagram and left a message, and I was pretty hyper because I was coming back from the beach, and I was like, Brad, you're a legend. You're a wizard. I can't believe this program. And I was just like chirping down the phone, really, really. And he just messaged me back, and he was just like, yes, you're what I want. That response is why I've done this program. And I just rambled down the phone for about a minute, and he just contacted me back and just wanted to know more about why and the specifics, because obviously it was a new program, so he wanted the market feedback.
So you've been a good source of feedback to him.
Yeah, well, I kind of work in marketing, and I know that one thing you want is you need feedback. So the reason I did it was, if he's starting something new, I thought you need this information, but I think I did it in a way that made him laugh, and he was like, "Oh, that sounds cool."
The kind of things Greg Owen's been doing, these sorts of things on the beach before his Eat Spheres, but people were laughing at him, weren't they?
Do you know what? Yeah, I think we all owed Greg Owen. We all owe him a huge apology, because I remember at one of the comps in Langland seeing him by the hut doing this, and we were all elbowing each other going, look at the state of this fella. But then he's got more trophies than all of us, so he has the laugh there. But.
Yeah, amazing. Chris Fowler, thank you very much for coming on Crest in partnership with Elusive.
So, Brad, you've said Chris is very much the sort of surfer Wavekey is aimed at. He's got that decent level of ability, but also he's got like a serious office job and a busy family life that means he doesn't get in the water as much as he'd like to. But where did you first get that idea for Wavekey?
From myself. Right. I want to do other things besides surf. And I found that if I got away from surfing for too long, then my surfing would deteriorate, and then it would make me feel in a way like a small bit of sort of depression, in a way of like letting go of something that I really love. And so then I either have to keep doing it all the time in order to keep it, or I got to let it completely go and forget about getting better or something which I wasn't prepared to do. And I just was like, like, and I also just thought, God, there must be so many other people out there that are, I mean, I guess what I feel is that Wave Key keeps me connected to surfing. I feel connected to my last surf, which my last surf was maybe 3 weeks ago. I don't know. It's been a long time since I've surfed. I've got 2 kids under 5. My wife has her own business, and we're just like, it's the way it's been. We moved. I mean, it's just the time of life where I see going surfing right now is taking too long. It's like too long, and so, but I do Wave Key daily. Sometimes I do a little, sometimes I do more. Sometimes I'm doing it through my teaching or whatever, but I feel connected to surfing so that next time I do go surfing, I won't be too far off. I won't be embarrassing. I won't embarrass myself. I'll have fun, and that's the point. I want to have fun when I go surfing.
Yeah.
Now I have high expectations of myself because of how I know I can surf. So that makes it hard mentally for me if I go surfing and I don't surf well. It's like, was that even fun? So I kind of started to think, I mean, other people must have that kind of thing that they were surfing when they were younger and surfed pretty good, and then they stopped because of an injury or a job situation or family or who knows, whatever, or they had to move away from the beach, but they still love surfing, want to, everything. And I just thought, there's also a belief that after a certain while you don't get any better, and I believe that you do get better. You can get better by practicing. You can get better. You can get more sensitive, and that sensitivity is what allows you to tap into the power of the wave, even if it's only a little wave without a lot of power. It's almost like the less that you do, the more you can feel the wave, and the more you can feel the wave, the more you can do, and that doing is kind of what makes surfing fun. And so, I just kind of kept thinking like, oh, this would be great for that guy. This would be great for that lady. That'd be great for this. That'd be great for the kid. That's like, man, I can't get to the beach as much as I want to get to, but and also all the technical things of, like not leaning over, and you're a kid and you're just starting to surf. If you know not to lean over and you start bottom turning, like without leaning, you'll start to get good quicker than people that are leaning over. And just like, I just felt like there's so much out there that is unclear and it's abstract, and it's like, do this, put your arm this way. And it's like so much more than that. It's got to be instinctual. And I just felt like, you know what, this is what people also they can have this, they can make Wave Key their own. They don't have to, I don't have it in there where you have to copy me and you have to do it exactly how I do it. It's like, it's just that these are the things that go into, a solid bottom turn. These are the things that go into a top turn. You do them how you want to do them. You make Wave Key your own, but it's your own thing. Kind of like, you're like, well, I do yoga. Well, I do BJJ. Well, I do this. I do that. I do this to stay fit. And I do this to stay fit. But like Wave Key's actually skill development. It's the learning method. Each time you practice, you learn something new about yourself. It might be minuscule. Sometimes it might be like a big light bulb. Like, whoa, I really felt that. And then I get from my students, Taro sent me a text yesterday, or just saying, I just want to let you know, like, man, I'm so glad you're in my life. I probably don't say that to you enough. But I just want you to know, like, every time we do a session, I have a new excitement for surfing, and that's it. If you have a new excitement for surfing and you live far from the beach, you're gonna maybe try to figure out a way to get to the beach because you have a new excitement for it, rather than like, I'm just gonna go there, And so that's where the drive is to help people enjoy what they fell in love with, And if I can help that, and be an answer and have answers. Like I've got I don't think I have all the answers, but if you hit me with a question that I can't answer, my attitude is yes. That's a question I don't know. I don't know that one. Great, thanks. I'm going to go fucking find it, rather than
research it
make up something or be. I'm going to go, yeah. But I feel like I can answer because I'm training, coaching, watching the very, very best in the world, and feel like I can help them. Do better in these parts and these parts and these parts. So anybody below that, it's much easier for me to help. They're just easy. They're more blatant. It's more obvious to me. Like, oh yeah, I felt that before. Oh yeah, I remember making that one. Oh yeah, okay. It's just whether the person anybody who's going to sign up for WaveKey is somebody who wants to surf better.
That's very much a lot of the things that Chris Fowler feels as well. What Taro was sending you that text, and Chris Fowler was sort of saying that he's the most excited he's been about surfing in his life. And as you hear in the package, Chris is a guy who he won a big contest here back in the 90s. And he's been a really committed, keen surfer when he was younger, and then he said now in sort of I think we used the word vintage. A surfer of his vintage is now, excited and frothing like a grom. Chris told me, look, he said, you've got to do this a few nights in a row in a flat spell, and then get in the water, and feel the difference. People always laugh at me, Brad, because I do surf a lot, and I go surfing for like 20 minutes when it's terrible and things like that, and then I did surf like 1 foot slop after doing the backside takeoff form for a few days, and I really did immediately notice like a speed out of the blocks, and this was because I was thinking. I wasn't thinking. I was doing this. I had been thinking about centering my gravity, coming down on that outside foot. And that idea of thinking about where the rail is and that relationship between the pad of my foot and the pressure that's being exerted on the rail. And Rhino, you had a look at the backside takeoff form as well, didn't you?
I did.
And it was interesting as well because you meant when you were talking earlier about that surfboard. Your then my Doc Lausch board, and I forgot another really important part of that design that you guys came up with. Was the flat deck. I was just remember you said it earlier, and I forgot about that. The flat deck, this idea that your foot is not sort of having to curl around a dome deck and then needing to press that little bit more to exert pressure on the rail. By having your deck completely flat, immediately any rotation that you put into your foot is going straight into the rail. And it's really what I found fascinating with WaveKey is the way that all of that acute thought about pressure and weight and the rail and buoyancy and the reaction of the rail is combined with this kind of like mindset and physical exertion that kind of feels like a martial art. And was that the plan, to bring that kind of the mindset idea of the martial arts together with the idea of what it would mean on a surfboard when you stood on one?
Well, to define it more, it's just the relationship to your feet is the most important relationship for a surfer, because that is the only body part that touches the surfboard. That's it. It's the bottom of your feet. So your relationship to your feet has to be on the highest level that you can make it. And so all of WaveKey's, the guide is your feet. You are your own guide going, okay, you can tell, hey, if I lift my chest up a little bit, I can get more pressure on my toes. If I sink my chest a little bit, it allows me to go down into my heels more. Am I holding myself here? Am I this? What is it? And then you ask yourself the question, and then you go, what am I doing? Where's the pressure on my feet? Oh, that'd be exactly where it would be just before I did a cutback. Okay, that'd be exactly where I'd be just as I'm finishing the top turn, or I'm finishing the bottom turn. And you start to get this relationship awareness with your feet, and that translates into the surfboard. And that's what you want. You want it from the bottom up, not from the top down. And so you don't read it with your mind and go, okay, bottom turn. Now do this and drop down here and twist and do that. You don't do that. You just know you feel it from below, and you feel like, the board just unweighted, and I'm awaiting the board as I'm going down the set for this bottom turn. You're doing all this stuff at such a high speed. There's no way you can think, put my arm here and do that. This is why I don't believe in like a lot of the coaching that's like, put your arm here and do this and do that. And then back to the flat deck of the surfboard. The other thing to add to what you say is your foot is closer down to your feet are closer to the water. If you're up here, you're higher and farther away from the water. And so when you have an old surfboard that's your favorite surfboard, you put dents in it, and by putting those dents in it, you're closer down into the water. It's a physical law. You're lower down in there. You can feel it more. So everything around Wakey is designed to increase your sensitivity, to increase your feeling, because through your feeling is how you can control the board and how you know what to do with the wave, rather than it being like some set of instructions, or kind of like, could you imagine being in like a fight and you have to think about like, okay, the trainer said, okay, keep my hands up. And then the trainer said, when he does this flinch, I got to do this and I got to do that. You just be like, boom, you get knocked out in a second, because it all has to be instinctual. So I'm helping people with Wakey because it's slow. It's in slow, controlled like place where your brain can capture the information and go, that's how I go down and get closer to the surfboard. Not just the vague, get close to the surfboard. How do I get close to the surfboard? And that's what we go through. Because being close to the surfboard is how you're going to have the most control. That's why bodyboarders can take off later than surfers, because they're close to the board. They're so close to the board they don't get bumped off it. It's all designed, and so your body has to have a certain level of mobility and flexibility. But if the only time you're asking yourself to have the mobility and flexibility is when you're surfing, or you're slightly doing some other yoga, you're like, what kind of mobility? What kind of flexibility? So through WaveKey, you can tell that if you go down here and it hurts, you're like, oh shit. I guess I need to like, okay, am I doing it right? Like, okay, okay. Oh, I guess I need to kind of ease into that, and my nervous system has to get used to it. And it gives me a motivation and sort of a yardstick or a measuring stick that, well, I need to get more mobile. And then I'm more mobile on the land, and then I can get more mobile in the water, and that way I hope that seems to make sense. It's very deep, and then it goes down. I go down into energetically projecting. And this is something my dad, because of his diving, he's got the background of like, okay, so you do this dive, but how do you project power and beauty and that extra thing? And it's internal, it's mental, and it's kind of metaphysical. And so going in that place by practice and doing it with practicing the WaveKey, like one of the things I do is before I do the takeoff, and I didn't add this to the fundamentals one because I hadn't developed it yet, but is I take a second to flatten my entire body on the ground and just see if I can just let all the tension out of my body, and then I begin the takeoff. By doing that, what happens to me when I'm surfing is a wave. I have an opportunity to catch a wave. And if you're like me, that moment is like, fuck yeah, it's almost going to happen. And I get excited and I'm like, fuck, so shit kind of like, there's adrenaline all of a sudden. By me practicing this like zone, it gets me in I have much more access to my body. I'm not tense. and I catch waves easier. And I also start my process of taking off with a lot more aplomb or just poise, and that in itself makes it easier for me to get my feet in the right spot. It's a domino, and hey dude, you don't have to, you can kind of be like, hey, I don't need to do an air reverse because I'm so fucking psyched on taking off on a wave and making it as buttery as I fucking possibly can, because when you think about it, like this for me, like I'm watching, I paddle out at D-ball over here, and there's Mick Fanning taking off, and I watch him take off, and he just goes, and he looks like, it looks bitchin', I look at, and I know right away. I mean, obviously, I know it's Mick Fanning, but then I'll see another person, and they'll take off, and they look real fluid, and I go, well, that guy surfs good, or, well, that girl can surf good, man. She's got, the takeoff is your first point of like, recognizing, oh, that's a good surfer, So anyway.
Cool. Yeah, Brad. The more demanding forms of wave key, you start dealing with like combos, and is that again because of your belief in the importance of like linking turns together?
Yes, totally. Because you are. I don't know about you, but if you catch a wave and you do one really good turn on it, but you do that one good turn, but then the wave passes you by and you realize you could have got two more. You kind of powers that one good turn, you kind of want to be like, shit, I could have kept going on that thing, and just the connectivity, the feeling of being connected to the wave, going from turn to turn to turn is usually you kick out of those things going, that was fun. And I think there's not a lot of light around, sort of like I said earlier, the spaces in between, or what do you do after the turn to get yourself, in this position to be able to move to the next turn fluidly. And that's where I think people can continue to get better no matter what age they are,
So Wave Key subscribers also get to attend various events and seminars, where you do sort of live streams and you do talks about different areas of surfing and really breaking it down. And Chris Fowler has told us that while we've got you here, Brad, before you go for your dinner, that we've got to try and pick your brains for a surf tip each before we get off air. So Rhino and I have both had a little think about our single biggest issue with our own surfing, and we were going to ask you about that. Okay. So I think mine is probably shared by many, right? I am a tall, lanky guy. I'm all limbs. I've spent my entire surfing life ashamed of these limbs and wanting to get rid of them. So what is the best way of making sure that I can rein those limbs in when I'm surfing, or do I need to rein them in? Is there something I could be doing with them?
Yes. The thing with the limbs is, if you've ever watched ice skating, when they first start doing the turn, when they start doing a twirl, the arms are out wide. And the arms being out wide, it's a slower turn. Right? And then by the time they turn around and they pull the arms in, they start spinning faster. So there's time when you're riding smaller waves, or you're going to do a tighter turn, you might want to have your arms closer to your body, in the sense of not just putting them at your sides, but maybe, one is straight up and one straight down. And this movement right here is going to be faster than this movement right here. So for instance, if you're going to go up and do a top turn, a frontside top turn in a little wave, you know what I mean? You might want them to be like, one's going towards the sky and one's going towards the water. It allows you to turn your torso real fast. So the limbs, it's not so much, it's just that you're probably got your limbs out here. When you want when you want to go fast, you're trying to speed up your torso, but it's really difficult if your arms are way out. That's why people, when you're riding big waves, you're not doing as much vertical stuff. You're having your arms out wide like this makes a nice, long, slow, pretty
long drawn, right? Yeah.
And a cutback is kind of a slower, wider turn. So arms way out looks cool. Now you can also, during the turn, as you're going like this, you can also finish them up with like that. You know what I mean? You can do all kinds of things. But when you want to make tight turns, you need your arms to be close to your body, basically. And that's the physical law. Practice that in wave key so that you go, okay, I'm gonna visualize a small. Are you natural foot or goofy?
I'm a natural.
Yeah, so I'm gonna visualize a small right, I'm going to go down, do the bottom turn. You know what I mean? I'm going to twist, and then I'm going to imagine doing this tight top turn. So you just bring them up like straight up like that, and you just, you know, if it's more of like a down the line turn, you don't need to, you actually won't be doing it like that. That actually make you turn. You want it to, that's why you see people with a little lower balance point for more of a horizontal turn.
Yeah. It's amazing you mentioned a physical law. That's actually what stopped people from believing that the Earth went round the sun for like a millennia or something, was that idea you were just saying with your arms really far out, is that if you want to turn what's in the center, if everything that's outside is far away, that has to turn so much faster and so much harder. And that was literally what made Nicholas Copernicus realize that the Earth went round the sun was the fact that the stars couldn't be spinning because they were too far away from our center of gravity. So you're talking about like cosmic stuff there. That's really cool.
Yeah, that's what's cool about physical laws. You know what I mean? And the, you know, with diving, you got to like step out there and you got to start somewhere, and then and they use their arms, arms and their body to spin into the turn, and the arms have to come in tight when they do they never do fast spins with the arms out here. The only time the arms are way out here is with the swan dive, or you know what I mean? They just, or at the very beginning of the dive. So it's, you're also with arms. The other thing that you'll note, this will make a lot of sense to you over the years you watch a lot of surfing, is that most of the surfers really aren't moving their arms. The arms are somewhat in a stationary place, and then the body is moving. And so for anybody who's kind of a intermediate or beginner or, you know, in that zone, the first thing to do is to hold the arms in a way that is kind of a little bit like, almost like you're fencing in a way, or you're holding, one arm's holding an umbrella, the other arm is holding a sword, you know, and so you're kind of just, and you just leave them, you don't hold them stiff or fists or anything like that. The best thing I ever heard was my Aikido sensei said it was more about as if you were, you know, if you've gone to a hose, you turn the hose on and then the water's running through the hose. You can still bend the hose, but there's energy going through the hose, right? So that's how you hold the arms. They're relaxed, but you hold them like that so that when your body turns, you know what I mean? This is what's happening all the time. The body is turning, because if they're going like this and your body's turning and then they're going, they weigh a certain amount, so they'll throw you off. They'll throw your timing off. So what I learned was when my timing was off, is I would hold and I still do it today. If my timing's off, I just hold my arms like just kind of still, and then it allows me to like, oh, there's the center of my body, okay, and then I kind of start to let them go a little bit. Yeah, that's a long. I hope that kind of helps you out there.
Oh yeah, more than. Conscious of keeping you from your dinner, Brad. I don't know if you've got a moment for Rhino's question before we go.
Yeah.
So Brad, really, like I'm thinking about the grommets as well as myself actually, and you know, I watched a lot of the grommets down the beach, and a lot of them just seem to race down the line instead of actually perhaps concentrating on trying to hit the lip. They seem to be missing that first section. But how do you get the grommet to sort of be focused on the lip and actually really get more vertical, you know, more to like the 12 o'clock position?
Well, that is that starts prior to the bottom turn. So prior to the bottom turn, the torso twists in the opposite direction that the surfboard is going to build tension. To build it's an intentional tension, right? So you twist the opposite direction. And then when you're in the bottom turn, and I explained this through Wave Key, that's when you drive and extend and twist the body towards the top turn. And it twists from the hips. The upper body has to be relaxed and not tense. And there's an extension going on. And then to hit the lip, the the body has to, the chest comes up as you go up towards, as you finish the bottom turn, and then the chest has to sink down so that the tailbone can come underneath, and so that the back of the ribs can open up so that the knees can easily come into the chest. Because if the chest is open like this, I can only get my knee this close to my chest. So as soon as I sink my chest, it comes in.
Yeah.
See, it's getting the body to do that in like so that all the body parts are doing it in symphony. So that by the time you come around and you're bringing your knees into your chest, you're already looking at where you're going next. Mick Fanning's pretty incredible at this. Taro's very, very good at this. I spent a lot of time with Taro twisting the bottom turn and looking at seeing how far his body will twist. And then it's a super complex turn. The front side top turn is super complex. And it just requires, it helps when you know intellectually what to do. You practice it in slow motion, your brain gets a hold of it, and you realize, wow, I actually, even though there's a lot to this, I have to not try to do it. If I force it in any way, it's like cutting off. It's almost like if you're driving a car and as soon as if you try to accelerate without shifting into the right gear, it won't go any faster. Even though you're going, it won't go any faster. That's kind of what the body does. It contracts, and that has kind of a lot to do with secure, like that nervous system security. Your nervous system will just shut down on you because it's like, you're gonna hurt me, so I'm gonna clam up on you because you're gonna hurt me. And it depends if you're based on your past injuries and things like that. But that's what I see, and has a lot to do with how I learned. I learned a lot through Feldenkrais, which is a lot of brain, nervous system, how the body works in symphony, so that you can deliver what you want to deliver. So I think that I there's a lot to that one, but I hope that it's my total scientific way out there guru stuff, but it is teachable.
Yeah. Okay, Brad. I know you need to shoot off, but I'd like to offer up a big thanks to you on behalf of Crest in partnership with Elusive. It's been an absolutely amazing experience picking your immense surfing brain, Brad, and diving into your world. It's been incredible. Thanks very much. And actually, what's the best way of finding WaveKey for our listeners if their curiosity has been aroused?
It's just wavekey.com, and I'm happy to offer a 10% discount to anybody that signs up through you guys. I'll give you guys a code, and
sweet.
2 ways of paying for it. You can pay for the whole year, which I recommend because it is a year course. Okay. And if you've been serving for any amount of time, no one's going to be able to tell you how to rip in 2 weeks. Like it takes time. But so I go through everything: takeoff, bottom turn, top turn, cut back, tube ride, floater, and a basic air, front side and back side within the year. And I also do live streams that put nuances into these different forms. And the forms all tie together so you can do them in a flow. And, it's kind of a thing that you learn and do 10 to 15 minutes a day. And if you can do it like 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes in the evening, that's probably even better. You don't have to, this isn't one of those, try to do 1,000 sit-ups. It's more like if you do 7 quality movements, that's how your nervous system starts to get to know it. And you basically get to know this stuff so much that it becomes a part of you. And that's what you want. You don't want to be thinking. But if you do make like for me, when I make mistakes, I actually know. I'm like, oh, I know what I did, which is what you probably saw yesterday on the Olympics when Illo had that semifinal, made a lot of mistakes, fixed things in the final. There's just that, Kanoa, he too in the semifinal did that corrupt, couldn't make it. Then he came back and adjusted and made that big air. He's so cute. Yeah. He's so cute. And anyway, just to say for the last thing that the combinations are really good for flow, and they move. As you move from your front foot to your back foot to your back foot to your front, you go back and forth, and that's all based on control and speed, and harnessing the power of the wave.
Yeah, and as we can see there, if you're lanky, then or you're looking to get more vert, then you've had a freebie to start off as well, guys. So yeah, definitely head on over to WaveKey and have a look at that. We're always keen to hear anything you have to say, listeners, and we can, of course, pass comments to the WaveKey guys, possibly via Chris Fowler, as we know that Brad's a busy man. Looks like you got a lovely bit of dinner going for you there shortly, Brad. Thanks again very much, Brad. We're really appreciative of your time this morning here in Wales, afternoon in Australia. So yeah, thanks. Diolch yn fawr, as we say in Wales. So any comments, ideas, tales, please do get in touch, either by emailing us at castcrest@gmail.com or via our Twitter or Instagram pages. Crest is available through Google Podcasts, Spotify, Apple and YouTube. And if you like what you hear, then please subscribe and review. Plenty of back issues to catch up with. And thanks again to Brad, and thanks to all our listeners. See you soon. Diolch am gwrando a gwelwch chi y tro nesa.
Hwyl fawr.
Thank you. Bye.
And there you have it. What an amazing insight into surfing. Brad is a true professor of our sport. As mentioned earlier, to access that 10% discount, simply enter the promo code WaveKeyCrest, all in lowercase, no spaces at the WaveKey checkout. And good to our word, Tom and Vorney will still be catching up with Greg Owen in time for the 6th of September. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.